And now I've got a series of questions that I have prepackaged that I think would be ideal to go over right now. What do you think?
I would love to.
Good. This is called Heart's First Whisper. So it's about your heart answering and not even your mind or your thoughts. So go to that nothingness world right now and use that. Okay. First question. What was the hardest part of returning to this world?
The denseness. It was so dense and so dark. Like not in a beautiful blackness kind of way. It was heavy and dense.
Oh, yeah. Typically, it's like you've got massive amounts of information and you have to squish it down into a tiny little thumb drive. And it can't all make it. So you leave chunks of stuff behind. You take a few things with you, but you get jammed into this tiny little body. And I guess that's part of the experience that we ask for when we come here. And it feels even more painful when you go do an NDE and come back.
Yeah, it was very painful. Especially coming from a place of just pure love, curiosity, and joy back into this place full of hate, negativity, fear, judgment, anger, all this stuff. The emotions of the world were dense and heavy. The physical was dense and heavy. All of it was just very heavy.
And do you by now have a feeling of why you're here in this heaviness?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I kind of mentioned throughout my whole life, I tried really hard not to let the illness stop me. And I graduated high school early. I bought a house at 19 by myself, no co-signers or anything. Um, you know, took on independence, never tried to go for disability or anything. Because I was like, no, I can do this. I can take on the world. I want to learn. I was taking college classes before I graduated high school at 16, and just always wanted to achieve everything. Well, that comes from my soul. I also would like the fast track. So I've realized I am trying to take 5 different master's courses all at once.
Well, yeah, and by the way, so for those listening, you're talking about not going to college. You're talking about the earthly experience is that college. And while you're here, you made things really hard on yourselves, like harder than most people. And so you're talking kind of about pre-life planning and then,
Yes.
jumping in and executing. And when in a couple of questions from now, we're going to talk about that soul contract. So hang on to that thought. All right, next question is, how did the realization that creation is math impact you?
I think understanding that math and frequency have such a huge important role in our lives. It doesn't mean, I've gone out and learned, programming or software development or anything like that. I've really taken an interest in learning more about frequencies and energy and, actual creation with how that works. And you're talking about the med bed. Dr. Joe talks about that in the way he calls it is going into coherence. They can actually do physical readings on the body of your brain and your heart going into coherence. And, that's frequency coming back together and fixing all the things that take us out of that.
Right. And you mentioned how negative or positive thoughts can affect a plant. I've also heard of it as the rice experiment. So you have rice and water in a mason jar, and you label one with love and the other one with hate, and another one that's completely ignored.
Yep.
And so you'll adore one of them and hate another one and ignore the middle one. And it turns out the one you love stays white and fresh and lovely. The one you hate gets a little gnarly. And the one you ignore is actually, and this might be a surprise, is the one that actually turns the darkest and has the most density because it's just flat out ignored. Even the one that you yell at feels a little bit of energy from you. It's kind of crazy. And we're what, 70 some plus percent water? So as
Yep.
you talk to yourself or to others around you, imagine the same impact.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, number 3. How would you describe the purpose of your life today?
The purpose of my life today is being here for others. 100%. What I do, the books I've written have been to help others and know that their story, no matter how crazy it might seem, how hard, how beautiful, we all have these very unique stories. We could even be with a partner who has the same experience but different perceptions on it. And just really inspiring that healer within yourself, inspiring that power within yourself that has been diminished by our political system, our education system, our cultures, our religions that all, don't want us to realize what power we have inside. Because if we all realize how powerful we are, who's going to be able to tell us what to do? So that is a huge purpose of my life, is helping people find their purpose, find their power, find their voice, find their soul.
So you're suggesting that we live on an earthly realm where there are powers that be that are telling us what to do?
Oh yeah. I know, it's shocking, right? No one's ever told what to do, not by anyone ever.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think of the greater masses that it only takes a few select folks that tell you what to do for who knows nefarious reasons or whatever, because those that just really don't need, they don't. I don't have a need to tell anybody to do anything. I just don't, right? But there are just a select few that do, to control, manipulate, and all those other crazy words that go on in there. And so the notion of all the stuff that we're doing and what you're sharing today is kind of wake up to the power within you. Know that you have this power to direct yourself, and your own intentions are that power, and stay with that.
Yep, 100%.
Number 4, how has your relationship with fear changed?
I was really fearful for a long time. I was fearful of this unknown illness. I was fearful of the insomnia. I was fearful of life. Just how much worse could it get? How much more can I take? Um, and then I would go out and do fear-based things and, high sports, because it's like, I was scared all the time anyway, and it felt like I could overcome that fear by just living it through extreme sports and activities. And now I don't fear anything. I am so trusting. I know what's beyond here, so I'm not scared. I wasn't scared of death anyway. I was actually so scared to live. That's really where a lot of my fear was. I was so scared to live. And now I'm not scared to live, even though I've come down with a couple more conditions that I'm working on, getting those healed too, and learning what the purpose of those are. I know it'll come to me in clarity. It always does. It just takes time. And I'm not scared of that. I'm not scared of the what ifs, or, the future or the past even, because it's only the internal now. So I really don't fear much. I'm very trusting. I go with the flow, and that goes with my business, my relationships, my health, just absolutely everything. So, there's tons of fear mongering on, you know, the news and politics and, all this stuff. And I am so tuned out from all of it, because I I'm just, why be sucked into that? It's such a low emotion. And if I can create my reality here, I don't need to worry about, what may or may not be going on.
And do you just keep yourself away from all of that negative, or is it that it happens around you and you just don't let it affect you?
Both, obviously I'm not in a box, I'm not isolated, but I also know there are three, four, five sides to a story, and things at play that we don't always know what they are. And it's like, if I don't have really any control over creating that reality, why do I need to be a part of it when I can create my own? By having this positive, fearless energy, it also just keeps it away from me.
Exactly. And oftentimes, if it's news related, oftentimes it isn't really about what they're saying, because more often than not, what they're saying isn't quite true. Sometimes it's more of like, why are they saying what they're saying? They're trying to get this reaction out of their audience. For what purpose? Kind of roll it back a little bit to the root cause of that. You might find it helpful also. All right. So number 5 now is what have you learned about the power of thought and emotion?
Yeah, it's the key to manifestation. It's the key to creating. Um, we also have this blessing of time, even though it can feel not like a blessing. It can feel like, oh, I want things to happen instantly, or you start to doubt yourself because you don't see it happening yet. But once again, your thought it's this high frequency thought, and then it has to slow down to become real and matter. But a way to help speed that up is through emotion. You have these grateful, as if it's already happened. Dr. Joe talks a lot about that. You have the love, you have the curiosity, the joy. Oh, how is it going to show up? That's a huge thing, is just being curious and not trying to force it. And then beautiful things happen. But I say that we all have the blessing of time, because in my NDE, I was like, oh no, what happens if I get too close to that flame? Will I melt? Yeah, I melted. But you know what didn't exist there that exists here? Pain, fear, actual physical repercussions. So if you look, across the street and say, oh no, what happens if I, accidentally step in front of that, bus? Then instead of being in front of that bus, experiencing the pain and broken bones and whatever and fear, you have time to change. Oh, well, I'll stop at the light. I'll go a different direction. You can change where your thoughts are. So just because you have a negative thought, because we all do, that's part of being human, doesn't mean you have to let it stick there and linger. You can refocus it, you can redirect it, you can change, and with that emotion behind it, you can definitely pull that one into reality.
Yeah, and I've heard you say before that thank goodness we don't manifest instantly because we
Yes.
do have all these crazy fear-based experiences and thoughts down here. Like, what if I end up in front of the bus? Well, we don't instantly go in front of the bus like we might on the other side, but fortunately, on the other side, we can be put back together again. Also, here we just sort of think about it and then we don't do it.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it doesn't manifest. And so that's cool. Now, the notion of thought and emotion, those are two separate things, sort of thought here, emotion, and feelings down here. I would ask a follow-on question to this is sort of emotion and feelings is the notion of intuition. What does intuition feel like to you? It feels like there's a lot of people that are just not in touch with that.
Yeah, once again, we are taught out of our intuition. I believe we all firmly have it. We grow up with it and we're taught out of it. And I help some of my clients by tapping back into their intuition. There's games we can play with the universe. I really like Pamela Grout's E Squared book because it helps you learn to trust your intuition again. And it's also the first thought or feeling you have when you ask a question or, there's a scenario. It's what comes after is your brain trying to logically make sense of it. Oh, but what about this, this, and this? Your intuition is that very first instinct, your very first thought, your very first feeling. And it could only be, a split second.
Do you have a physical sensation associated with that? Like if you're sort of thinking about something and you engage with someone on a particular topic and all of a sudden your whole body gets, tingles throughout it and you're so excited about it, it feels like, is that just a random notion of, hey, this sounds fun? Or is that some intuition that's jumping in there to tell you you're on the right track?
Oh, yeah. So it doesn't happen every time with intuition. It doesn't need to be that loud and that present, but it definitely can happen. And I think it's so exciting because it's, I feel like my higher self or guides or the universe, coming in and like making it known, like, hey, this is awesome. You're on the right track. You're maybe in coherence with the other person's energy or this other activity's energy. And, it's synchronized. It's maybe you put this on your path, all of that stuff. So it's just an extra loud, shout at you.
Oh, to get your attention.
Yep.
And then you kind of tune into, oh, okay, I got a blast. I'm going to make sure every time I get a blast like that again that I know that, this is a good thing for me. It's kind of, or if your intention is even way more subtle, but if you continue to get that little subtle message, train yourself to know, to pay attention and not overlook a signal like that. It kind of feels, right?
Yeah.
And number 6, what do you now believe about self-healing? Now, and what's your direction to folks? Because you've done it and shared that story, but what's like baby steps into folks doing their own self-healing?
Yeah, it definitely needs to start from a place of healing your soul and your heart. So I couldn't have done it when I was, feeling like I was not worth, healing. I didn't feel worth being loved. Therefore, I didn't really love myself. And that's no, that's not how you get healed. That is not how you heal. You have to come at it with love and gratitude for yourself first. So I think that is a huge thing is, really work on, these traumatic experiences. Being human is traumatic. And there's different things we go through all the time that are traumatic. Loss of our loved ones, loss of relationships, jobs, places, things, just there's so many hard things we go through, and learning to be grateful and how to accept them and yourself is going to be the number one biggest part, the biggest step into being able to actually heal from these physical chronic conditions. Because first you heal your heart and your mind, and then when they're healed, they can go into coherence and do physical healing.
Interesting. Yeah. So it kind of feels like The first thing you have to do is heal the relationship with yourself. Like
Yes.
if you're very judgmental, and it's like, oh no, yeah. So you've got to find yourself to have unconditional love for yourself. So you're not judging yourself in any way. Now I kind of feel worthy of healing some of the physical and other things that I have going on as well. So let's focus on those. Feeling worthy gives you that confidence and that full, true intention that I really do want to fix myself.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Hey, number 7. Now we're going back to soul contract. As I mentioned, did your soul contract change based on the NDE, or was the change you went through already set up in your pre-birth plan?
So my contract definitely was set up in my pre-birth plan. Even at 17, my mom said something about us entering the soul contract together, and I had no idea what she was talking about until much later. Hindsight is so clear. But I also talk about, you can pay down a soul contract, or you can, by acknowledging that you have this contract to, let's say you come down with Lyme disease or cancer. Okay, you have met those terms. You experienced that Lyme disease. You experienced that cancer. That doesn't mean it has to go on indefinitely. You have met the terms and conditions. The contract is now, no, it's completed. Some people just will stay in this contract not knowing that they've already met the terms and conditions of it.
So if that's the case, you could sort of think of your life blueprint, as a series of mile markers along the way. And maybe one of them is, as you said, oh, I'm going to have Lyme disease. Okay, but
Yep,
you don't have to have that your whole life. That's
exactly.
just your current challenge. Spend your focus and your intention overcoming that in whatever way it comes to you. And when you overcome it, continue on. But no, there's another mile marker out there in front of you, some other challenge.
Yep.
And you'll do that as well. So don't give up ever. Know that you've designed these, you've meditatively designed these so that these are the things you overcome while you're here. And that's the objective. So just keep going.
Same with abuse or addiction or, just any of the myriad of really hard things we go through. Um, it's just, yeah, we've put these mile markers in our contract. And then people ask me about, well, what about free will? If we've pre-designed this, how do we have free will? I like to say, if you are traveling from California to Florida, those are your two milestones. You are going from point A to point B. You're going to get there. But how are you going to get there? Are you going to fly? Are you going to drive? Are you going to take a boat and go around? Are you going to ride a bike? Are you going to walk? Are you going to hitchhike? What kind of car are you going to take? What kind of plane? The way you get there is where our free will is.
That's your free will, but you're definitely not going to New York. And if you start going that way, woof, the universe
Yeah,
is going to steer you to the right.
it always does.
Exactly. Cool. All right. Number 8. How did meeting the Creator change your understanding of God?
Oh man, that's such a big one. Being raised in one religion and then what I experienced, I came back and researched a ton of religions and philosophies. Like, who has it right? And I've become more of an omnist, which is there's a truth in all of them, but there's just no way to put who the creator and who the God is into our physical human language. And, of course, I don't know all the languages, but there is just such a peace of knowing that I was home and I was loved and I'm an extension, that gets to create all these different, versions and we get to relate back, as if he's a teacher or it's a teacher and we're just little kids that get to report back about our experiences. Um, so just the absolute peace and comfort knowing there's no judgment. If anything, these judgments or life reviews, it's you reviewing yourself and you reviewing your own actions and how they affected others. Um, there's no hell because hell, well, not necessarily no hell, but no damnation for eternity because eternity is a time-based concept and time doesn't exist beyond here. So you cannot be doomed to eternity because there's no such thing as eternity.
Wow. Okay. So this is interesting because I have heard you talk before about the notion of taking low density, dark energy with you to the other side. And if you do that and you can manifest instantly, you'll manifest a surrounding. They may look very much like, the dark side, right? And yet, if you instantly say, like I melted and I want these folks to put me back together again, you could also say, I want to just go in love and peace and joy. Pow! You're now in the most beautiful heaven there ever was. So you're not really jammed in there forever and so forth. You really have an opportunity to control that a little bit, as you mentioned, on the other side. So why do you think that it is in this physical world where the higher percentage of folks haven't gone to the other side and had this wonderful experience you did? That's why they love hearing these, by the way, because they all really want to do that. They love hearing the story. But in short, in the world where they did not have that experience, they're trying to figure things out. Now, since they were born and raised and lived their life, they're told other stories about this sort of thing, and they have no way of knowing what's real and what's not real. They haven't been to the other side. So what's your message to that world?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to those milestones and how are you going to get there? If you did not place a near-death experience in your life, but you placed hearing about them, having the curiosity for them, having these synchronicities, maybe awakenings, maybe exploring transcendental meditation. You place those milestones to get to the same place. And for the people who, that's not part of their plan at all, they could care less about these stories. They could care less about transcendental meditation or learning more, or, having strong opinions or one way or the other. Some people are just very integrated in their faith. They're like, I don't, my faith is strong enough. I don't need to know more right now. And there is nothing wrong with that. That is just what we have put into our path, our lives to experience. So I had to have an NDE because I am stubborn as all get out. And I need a large kick in the pants a lot. I need to be I believe that the universe had given me several soft ways into it that I just completely ignored. So they're like, all right, we're going to shove you. We're going to shove you off your cliff. We'll catch you, but you're jumping off the cliff. Where other people, they don't need such a harsh awakening because it is very, very hard for a lot of ND years. It's pretty traumatic. The dying process in itself, coming back, not knowing what's going on, understanding there's this amazing beyond and we're stuck here, just all these different things. And there are much gentler ways of getting there, like through different meditations and different ceremonies and different, ways of being and all that stuff. So that's why I had to do it the hard way, but other people get, a life raft when I had to swim, kind of like that.
Yeah, and the NDE is one painful way to do this, as you mentioned, but there's also the notion of OBE, so
Hmm.
out of body experience, which I, sort of hear more and more of, where you can kind of go through it in a controlled way, where you can still get to the other side and have these amazing experiences. And you do it by certain methods and practices, and that seems to be there's more of that going on right now, which is very helpful because then you can do it over and over and over. You can repeat, you can learn more from the other side. It isn't just a sort of a one and done. Now, by the way, a sub bullet on this is when you were on the other side and came back, how would you categorize the additional capabilities that you have now?
Yeah, I came back with medical intuition. I could actually feel where something was wrong in somebody's body. If I drove past a car accident, I could feel if, they had whiplash, if seatbelt burn, broke something, didn't make it. That was extremely, extremely hard and traumatic because, now I've got all these other people's pain. I could also hear people's thoughts very, very clearly. And it was kind of fun until I started hearing all the negative ones and, also feeling the emotions with them. And that was very dramatic and overwhelming. So I have been able to tap down. I no longer actually feel the sensation of people's pain. I am very connected intuitively. So often I will get, pictures or parts of words of what someone's going through. I can occasionally still hear thoughts, but I don't get the feelings associated with them, which is really nice. And I also have had a few psychic medium experiences where I didn't know this person, I didn't know the family or anything, and they came through, and everything was that I said was proven, and I had no information about it in the back end, which was really also really kind of scary when it happened. But looking back now, it's pretty cool as well. So Those are some of the big things, but mostly being so in tune with, my veil is so thin now after doing all this work and doing all this practice to be close to the blackness, to the void, to the everything and all the answers and possibilities that, when I work with people in the different capacities that I do, I can tap in and really help guide them however they need guidance.
Well, that's great. And that sets us up for when we talk about your website and your services that you have. And I got one question before that, the final one here, which is, how would you help folks and what would you share with someone who's currently, again, doesn't have that experience you've had and is really trying as hard as they can, but they're really trapped in fear?
Yeah, it's going to go back to a lot of training, training your mind and your body to come out of that fear. And there's some great techniques for it. EFT and TFT tapping, or EMDR if you want to go to a practitioner to do it. If you want to do it yourself, you can do different tappings on your meridians, which is really cool. It's like self EMDR that I really, really enjoy. And just being aware of, your fear and, learning different techniques on how to not let it get out of control, realize that you are in control and that you can really change that and change that frequency into something different. But it takes work and it takes practice and it takes, knowing how to do it.